Tomatoes are one of the things that I have in my pantry all the time. How do I use those to create meals? Listen up, and I'll tell you how I get inspired by tomatoes. Hi, I'm Nika Waters, and welcome to the Boat Galley Podcast. Today I'm sharing 10 different options and things that I think about when I see one can of tomatoes in my pantry. Today's episode of the Boat Galley Podcast is sponsored by SpotlessStainless.com, the safe, fast, and easy way to remove rust and protect your marine stainless steel. Brush on, wait 30 minutes, and rinse off this environmentally friendly gel. No scrubbing required. Brush on Spotless Stainless, remove rust. It's that simple. Use coupon code BG20, that's BG20, for an exclusive 20% discount on your order. SpotlessStainless.com. Make stainless sparkle. I love tomatoes. I particularly love fresh tomatoes, but those aren't always easy to find. Right now, during this pandemic, we're trying to go 5-6 weeks between shopping runs, and definitely we run out of fresh tomatoes long before we hit the end of that. So what about using canned tomatoes? When I'm trying to figure out what to make for dinner, I usually joke that I say I chop up some onions and garlic, throw them in a pan with some olive oil, and open a can of tomatoes, and then I'll figure out what I'm making for dinner. That's not that far off the mark. But I thought I would share with you some other ideas that I get when I look at a can of tomatoes, because I think one of the things in learning to cook flexibly is understanding that you can get inspired for what to make for dinner just by looking at one particular ingredient. And for me, tomatoes is pretty much it. One idea is pizza sauce, and by association, pizza. Maybe this one, along with pasta sauce, is so incredibly obvious, you don't need to think about it. But a can of tomatoes can become pizza sauce and or pasta sauce, and also be available to you for lots of other things, rather than just buying a can or a jar of pasta sauce or pizza sauce. My favorite pizza sauce is just very simply diced tomatoes that I've chopped up finely, and I saute them with some garlic and olive oil. That's it. It's also way better than anything that's called pizza sauce out of a can. So you don't have pizza crust? Use a piece of pita bread, or a tortilla, or a mushroom cap, or a leftover baguette sliced in half long ways, or a pancake, or a waffle, or I think you get the idea. So that's one, pizza sauce. Number 2, tortilla soup. This is one of our absolute favorite pantry dinners. What you do is you chop up onions and garlic. Are you sensing a theme here? Because that is what I wind up doing. A can of chopped green chilies, a can of chicken broth or vegetable broth, and a couple cans of tomatoes. I prefer stewed tomatoes, but if all you've got is diced or crushed or something, go ahead, do it that way. Take some tortilla chips or stale or crisped up tortillas, handful of cheese, pour that tortilla soup right on top, and you are in business. If you have cilantro, it's even better. I look at a can of tomatoes and I think about curry. Yep, start with those onions and garlic, stir in some curry powder, and once it starts to smell amazing, stir in a can of tomatoes and let it simmer for a little bit. You can throw in almost any protein, any vegetable you have. It's a great way to use up odds and ends. Serve it over rice, grits, bread, noodles, blah, 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 blah. You get the idea. Another idea, canned tomatoes, is salsa. Yes, I make salsa from canned tomatoes. No, it's not as good as fresh salsa made with fresh tomatoes, but a salsa made with canned diced tomatoes is usually at least as good as any canned salsa you can buy. Somehow diced tomatoes instead of like whole tomatoes that you've chopped up, again, I'm talking canned, they keep their fresh taste better than any other ones. And if you got salsa, you got almost anything else you could possibly want. Another recipe, shakshuka, which is basically eggs poached in tomatoes. And this is another one of these kinds of recipes that I love because it's like, oh, I can make something that simple and I call it dinner. Onions and garlic, some spices and herbs, a can or two of diced tomatoes, Slide in 1 or 2 eggs per person and cover it and cook it to perfection. If you got a sprinkle of feta cheese, all the better. I love to serve this on top of fresh made sourdough bread. Spectacular. Another, oh look, there's a can of tomatoes in the pantry. What am I going to make? Is black bean corn tomato salad or salsa or whatever you want to call it. If you've got some fresh red or green bell peppers, if you don't have those, this is still amazing on its own. Chop up onions and garlic. There's that theme again. Mix in some dressing. I usually do a vinegar-heavy dressing and some cumin. And then add in your can of black beans. Please drain and rinse your black beans and your corn. Anytime you're using canned vegetables other than tomatoes, it's really not a bad idea to rinse them, to drain them and then rinse them so that you get kind of the excess sauce and salt off of them, which I don't know about you, but I don't particularly like them in my recipes. Anyway, chop those up, add in your corn and your beans and your diced tomatoes, and let it marinate for a little while. Oh man, it's so good. Now my mouth is watering. It's so good on tortillas or inside a burrito or something like that. I love to do something that I call a kitchen sink casserole. And this is another one of my favorite ways of using up a ton of leftovers. I take a can of tomatoes and I dump it in the bottom of the pan. And then I layer any leftover starch, pasta, rice, grits, whatever, protein, vegetables. This is where if you've got kind of a couple of tablespoons of this and a couple of tablespoons of that left in the fridge that you didn't want to throw out, this is a great way to use it up. Layer that over together, probably top it with another can of tomatoes and then a layer of cheese, because cheese makes everything better anyway, right? Throw it in the oven till the cheese melts and you have this amazing sort of a makeshift lasagna, but I call it a kitchen sink casserole. And my last one is that if nothing else, I saute onions and garlic and any vegetables that I have, toss in whatever protein I've got handy. If I'm using sausage, particularly like dried sausage that I might want to slice up thinly and use for appetizers, but I only have a little bit of it left, I'll chop that into cubes and saute it along with the onions and the garlic. Add in a can of tomatoes and serve it over pasta or rice. It's a simple way of using up leftovers. There's another theme. But also, that's just it. When I have a can of tomatoes, I can do that very easily. And what flavor that turns out really depends on the spices that I use. But I tend to use more Mexican style spices, so cumin, oregano, garlic, and then Mediterranean, which are basil, oregano, and garlic. Those are definitely my favorites. And if you have fresh tomatoes, well, tomato basil mozzarella salad, a tomato sandwich, make a BLT, eat it like an apple with a little bit of salt on it. Ooh, roast them up for a flavor that just keeps forever in the freezer. Use little, particularly like grape tomatoes, as a veggie option on a hummus platter. That is a spectacular dinner all on its own right, particularly as it's starting to get warmer. One of the things that you can do as you are looking for ways to practice your cruising skills while you're not actually able to be out there cruising right now, try to make dinner tonight without looking at any cookbook. Think about what you like to eat. Look at the things that you have on hand. Hint, if you have it on hand, it's probably something that you like, so that's a great place to start. And think about how to adapt the ingredients that you have to what might be in the recipe that you're thinking of or something that you are inspired to try to make on your own. Get creative. And remember, it's always easier to add a little flavor than to take something away, especially when it comes to spices or salt. But I will say, it's pretty rare for me to meet a dish that has too much garlic in it. I'm looking forward to seeing you out there, hearing what inspires you and what you keep in your pantry always as a matter of course that can be used as a springboard for any number of amazing meals. Thank you so much for listening to the Boat Galley podcast. We love it when you leave us a 5-star review. We love it when you let your friends know about us. And we love it when you leave us a note and tell us what you'd like us to talk about on a future episode. Hope you're staying safe and healthy.